The etheric dance of forms pulsed with silent, crystalline light, a dangerous Glacian ritual where Vivia Pegasus, her form shimmering between diamond-hard and ethereal mist, navigated the fluxing energies, her empathic resonance a beacon in the chaos. Unbeknownst to her, this display of profound control, a mark of a potential species diplomat, also drew the veiled attention of the Cognitive Concord, an organization dedicated to purging unorthodox thought. Even as warp drive theorist Talon Grave, light years away, and prepared for a treacherous mission into the Iron Maze, a mission that would soon entangle their fates with an orphaned energy being and the very fabric of consciousness itself. The Iron Maze lived up to its name, a chaotic tapestry of ferrous asteroids, their magnetic fields in constant, violent flux, repelling and attracting each other in a deadly, ever-shifting ballet. Passages that were clear one moment became crushing death traps the next. Within this metallic labyrinth, two ships, sleek and nimble, darted through the treacherous corridors of rock and void. One was the Stardust Drifter, piloted by Talon Grave, his knuckles white on the controls, his brow furrowed in concentration as he cross-referenced stellar cartography with the erratic sensor readings. He was a man driven by an insatiable curiosity about the universe's deepest mechanics, particularly the elusive theories of advanced warp drives, but right now, his ambition was more prosaic, a promotion within the Galactic Search and Rescue Corps. The other ship, the Glacial Shard, was helmed by Vivia Pegasus. Her movements were precise, economical, her face a mask of serene focus. Glacians were known for their discipline, and Vivia was an exemplar. She navigated the Iron Maze not just with instruments, but with an innate sense, her empathic resonance picking up the subtle gravitic strains and magnetic tensions that even the most advanced sensors struggled to parse. Her people were masters of their physical forms, able to alter their density and texture at will, a biological marvel that made them formidable in diverse environments. Vivia, however, carried an additional, less common trait, a heightened empathic sensitivity that allowed her to bridge communication gaps where standard translators failed, a hint of the species diplomat she was becoming. They were rivals, Talon and Vivia, the top contenders for the section commander position. This mission to locate a missing research vessel, this Pathfinder, lost weeks ago in the Iron Maze was their final proving ground. Their comms channel crackled. Grave, report your vector. Vivia's voice was crisp, devoid of inflection, a pure transmission of data. It was a tone Talon found both irksome and, grudgingly, efficient. Glacians, he knew, operated within a rigid hierarchical command structure. Orders were given and expected to be followed without question. To Vivia, he was a subordinate in this temporary joint operation, despite their equal current rank. Vector 3 Mark 7, Pegasus. Talon replied, trying to keep the edge from his voice. Still picking up faint energy signatures consistent with the Pathfinder's drive core, but they're ghosting through these magnetic fluctuations. It's like trying to catch smoke with a net. He was a theorist, an ideas man, but he prided himself on his adaptability in the field. This maze, however, tested that adaptability to its limits. Maintain search pattern delta. Do not deviate, Vivia ordered. Efficiency dictates adherence to protocol. Talon gritted his teeth. Protocol doesn't account for a maze that reconfigures itself every 5 minutes. Pegasus. A little improvisation might be in order. He was ambitious, yes, but his ambition was tied to discovery, to understanding. He felt that Vivia's rigid approach might blind her to unconventional solutions. Improvisation invites chaos. Vivia stated, her voice unwavering. Chaos is inefficient. There was a beat of silence, then, my empathic senses detect distress. Faint but persistent. North by northwest, relative to my current position. Proceed with caution. This was new. Vivia rarely mentioned her empathic abilities directly in operational comms. It was an acknowledgement, perhaps, that the Iron Maze demanded more than just standard procedure. It was also a demonstration of her unique capability, a subtle reminder of why she was a strong candidate for promotion. Talon adjusted his course. Acknowledged. Moving to investigate. Anything more specific on that distress signal? Negative. It is diffuse. Not organic in the way human or Glacian distress presence. More like a fractured echo. Her voice held a flicker of something Talon couldn't quite decipher, not emotion, but perhaps a deeper level of processing, a hint of the unique way her mind worked. She was a biological enigma, her people capable of becoming as hard as the asteroids around them, or as intangible as the vacuum between. He'd seen training simulations where Glacians had phased through bulkheads, an unsettling and impressive sight. Vivia, he suspected, was more capable than most. The initial setup was clear: two skilled professionals, each with their own strengths and cultural baggage, vying for the same prize in an environment designed to break them. The tension between Talon's adaptable, intellectual curiosity and Vivia's structured, empathic precision was palpable. A silent contest played out amidst the grinding, shifting monoliths of the iron maze. The fate of this pathfinder was the objective, but their own futures hung in the balance, their rivalry a subtle undercurrent to every communication, every maneuver. The first hints of Vivia's hidden depth as a species diplomat were emerging, her empathic sense a tool beyond mere piloting. Just as the dangerous, shifting nature of the iron maze itself began to assert its dominance over their mission. They pushed deeper into the maze, the metallic scent of ionized particles sharp in the recycled air of Talon's cockpit. The faint energy signature of the Pathfinder grew stronger, but so did the instability of the asteroid field. Massive chunks of iron and nickel, some the size of small moons, pirouetted with ponderous grace or alarming speed, their magnetic fields clashing and creating pockets of intense gravitic distortion. Talon's ship, the Stardust Drifter, bucked and shuddered as he navigated a particularly turbulent corridor. Pegasus, I'm encountering severe gravitic shearing. The S-Pathfinder's signal is just beyond this cluster, but the passage is collapsing. I see it, Grave. Vivia's voice replied, remarkably calm. My long-range scans indicate a momentary stabilization in approximately 90 seconds. Hold your position. Do not attempt to force passage. Talon scowled. Hold position. We could be crushed if that stabilization window doesn't appear. I think I can thread the needle now if I push the engines. His ambition wasn't just for promotion. It was for being right, for proving his methods. Negative, Grave. Your vessel's structural integrity is rated lower than the Vira's glacial shard. My ship can withstand greater pressures. If the passage remains unstable, I will attempt entry first. Your role is support. Her tone was absolute, the inherent hierarchy of her culture asserting itself. Frustration simmered in Talon. Support. This is a joint operation, Pegasus, not a Glacian military drill. He knew he was being baited, but her unyielding demeanor was a constant irritant. He was intellectually curious, always seeking new ways, while she seemed content with established, rigid protocols. Suddenly Vivia's voice changed, losing its clipped formality, gaining a strange resonance. Wet. The distress signature, it's spiking, and it's not from the Pathfinder's crew. It's something else. Before Talon could respond, a blinding flash erupted from the asteroid cluster ahead. His sensors shrieked. Alarms blared across his console. What was that? He yelled into the comm. Energy discharge massive. Unknown origin. Vivia reported, her ship already maneuvering defensively. It appears to be emanating from the Pathfinder's location, but it's not characteristic of any known shipboard weapon or malfunction. Just then, 3 new contacts appeared on Talon's tactical display, sleek black ships with menacing, angular designs. They materialized as if from nowhere, cutting off the escape route Talon had been eyeing. Unidentified hostiles? Pegasus! Bearing 090, closing fast! Acknowledged, Vivia said. Her voice was tight. They are not standard pirate vessels. Their energy signatures, they are cloaked, Concord affiliation. Talon's blood ran cold. The Cognitive Concord. The infamous thought police. What were they doing here? Their mandate was the suppression of free will and unorthodox ideas, not salvage operations. Unless the Pathfinder had found something the Concord wanted suppressed, or wanted for themselves. Grave, defensive pattern Gamma 7. Vivia ordered, her ship's weapon systems already powering up. The mission parameters have changed. Primary objective, ascertain the nature of the Concord's interest. Secondary, survival. Survival sounds like a good primary objective to me. Talon muttered, but he complied, his fingers flying over the controls, his mind racing. The Concord. This complicated things immensely. His intellectual curiosity, usually a boon, now felt like a dangerous liability if it made him a target. The Concord ships opened fire, bolts of disruptive energy lancing through the asteroid field. Talon expertly dodged, the Stardust Drifter nimble under his command. He saw the glacial shard shimmer, its surface momentarily taking on the appearance of polished obsidian as a blast glanced off its hull. Vivia was using her density shifting ability on her ship's outer layers, a tactic few species could replicate. Grave. The Pathfinder is adrift just beyond that debris cloud. Vivia transmitted. I'm picking up a single faint life sign aboard, but the distress I felt earlier, it's stronger now, and it's definitely not human. It's crystalline. Crystalline. Talon's mind, ever the theorist, latched onto the anomaly. The Concord's presence. A non-human life sign. The strange energy discharge it all pointed to something far beyond a simple lost research vessel. His ambition for promotion was rapidly being overshadowed by a far more pressing concern uncovering the truth and staying alive while doing it. The Concord fighters were relentless, trying to herd them, to box them in. One of them got a lucky shot, a glancing blow that sent the Stardust Drifter spinning. Shields at 40%. Talon grunted, fighting for control. Grave, I will draw their fire, Vivia announced. Proceed to the Pathfinder. Assess the situation. Report immediately. That is an order. Before Talon could argue, the sea glacial shard surged forward, its form becoming almost insubstantial for a moment, slipping between two enemy blasts, then solidifying again, firing precise volleys that forced two of the Concord ships to break off their attack on Talon. It was a risky maneuver, but executed with flawless precision. Vivia was showing her mettle, not just as a pilot, but as a tactician. Talon seized the opportunity. He pushed his battered ship through the debris cloud, the wreckage of asteroids pulverized by the earlier energy blast, and there it was, the Pathfinder. It was heavily damaged, scarred by weapons fire, its hull breached in several places. It was a miracle anything was still alive aboard. He brought the Stardust Drifter alongside, matching velocities with the drifting hulk. Pegasus, I'm at the Pathfinder. It's in bad shape. Breach on the starboard side. Looks like it took heavy fire before that energy pulse. The life sign Grave. And the crystalline signature. Vivia's voice was strained. He could hear the thrum of weapons fire in the background. She was holding off 3 Concord ships on her own. Talon ran a focus scan. 1 human life sign weak in the engineering section. And yes, a highly concentrated energy source, non-biological in the conventional sense, but it's resonating strongly. It's in the main research lab. It feels strange. Almost alive. His curiosity was piqued, even amidst the danger. The Concord will be attempting to board. You have limited time, Vivia stated. Secure the human survivor. Investigate the energy source. And Grave, be adaptable. That last word, adaptable, coming from Vivia, surprised him. It was almost an admission that her rigid protocols might not be enough. The immediate consequences of their encounter with the Concord were clear. Their simple SAR mission had escalated into a dangerous confrontation with a formidable and ruthless enemy. Vivia, despite her adherence to hierarchy, was already revealing a tactical flexibility and a protective instinct that went beyond mere duty. And the mystery of the Pathfinder deepened, hinting at a discovery that the most dangerous organization in the galaxy was willing to kill for. The Iron Maze had become a crucible, and the heat was rising. Talon docked the Stardust Drifter with the crippled Pathfinder, the emergency airlock hissing as it sealed. Boarding now, Pegasus. Keep those Concord goons off my back. He grabbed his emergency kit and a pulse pistol, the metallic tang of fear mixing with the thrill of the unknown. I will endeavor to do so, Grave. Vivia's voice crackled, followed by the distinct sound of her ship's cannons firing. The Concord are persistent. The interior of these Pathfinder was a wreck. Emergency lights flickered, casting long dancing shadows. Debris littered the corridors, and the air was thin, smelling of burnt circuitry and ozone. Talon moved swiftly, his mag boots clanking on the deck plating. He followed his life sign scanner towards engineering. He found the survivor, a woman in a tattered research uniform, pinned beneath a fallen support beam. She was conscious, but barely. Hold on, Talon said, his voice gentle. I'm from Galactic Search and Rescue. We're gonna get you out of here. The woman's eyes, wide with pain and fear, focused on him. The Concord they came for, the prism. She whispered, her breath ragged. The prism? Talon asked, working to activate the emergency release on the beam. What is it? Not what, who? She gasped as the beam lifted slightly. An entity of pure light. We found it communicates through emotions, colors. Talon felt a chill. An energy being. This was what the Concord was after. His warp drive theories often touched upon exotic states of matter and energy, but this was beyond anything he'd encountered. This was the crystalline signature Vivia had detected. He managed to free the researcher, but her injuries were severe. We need to move, he said, supporting her. My ship is docked. Can you walk? Barely, she coughed. The lab, you have to protect it. It's innocent. Protect who? Talon pressed, but she was fading. Suddenly, a section of the corridor wall behind them exploded inwards. Two figures in the stark, black armor of the Cognitive Concord stood silhouetted against the breach. The human will remain, one of them said. Its voice filtered through a modulator, flat and menacing. The asset will be secured. Talon shoved the researcher behind him, raising his pulse pistol. I don't think so. The fight was short and brutal. Talon was a theorist, not a frontline soldier, but his adaptability kicked in. He used the floating debris as cover, his shots aimed to disable rather than kill. The Concord troopers were efficient, relentless, but he managed to take one down with a lucky shot to a leg joint. The other pressed the attack, forcing Talon back. Just as the Concord trooper lunged, a section of the bulkhead beside it seemed to ripple, and then solidify into a figure of gleaming, rock-hard crystal Vivia. She had changed her density, her form now a razor-edged Glacian warrior. With a single, impossibly fast strike, she disarmed the trooper and sent him sprawling with a blow that would have shattered durasteel. Your definition of keeping them off my back needs work, Pegasus, Talon panted, lowering his pistol. Vivia's crystalline form shimmered, softening back to her usual appearance, though her eyes still held a flinty hardness. My empathic senses registered your heightened distress, and the Concord's intent, their orders were to retrieve an asset and eliminate witnesses. She glanced at the injured researcher. She is fading. We must extract her. Then her gaze fell on Talon. You are uninjured? Scrape singed, but functional? Talon confirmed. Thanks. Impressive entrance. Efficiency, Vivia stated, though there was a flicker of something else in her eyes, concern, perhaps, or just the heightened awareness of a combatant. The Concord ships are regrouping. They will attempt to board en masse. We must secure this prism before they do. The researcher called it an entity, Talon said. Communicates with emotions and colors. It's in the main lab. This seemed to resonate with Vivia. Emotions and colors. My empathic abilities might be able to interface with it directly. This was it, the hint of her role as a species diplomat coming to the fore. Her unique biology was not just for defense or navigating treacherous environments. It was a key to understanding the unknown. They helped the injured researcher towards Talon's ship, Vivia taking point, her senses alert for more Concord troopers. The Stardust Drifter is too small for all of us, and this prism, if it's substantial, Talon said, and it's damaged, we will take the glacial shard, Vivia decided. Its defensive capabilities are superior, and it has a specialized containment bay that might be suitable for an energy entity. Her command structure was still in place, but now it felt less like an imposition and more like a pragmatic assessment of their dire situation. They reached the Pathfinder's main research lab. The door was sealed, but a soft, pulsating light emanated from within, shifting through a spectrum of colors: blues, greens, soft yellows, then a flicker of crimson. Vivia paused, her head tilted. The distress I felt earlier, it's concentrated here. And fear, but also curiosity. Talon watched her, fascinated. Her usually stoic face was subtly animated by the emotion she was perceiving. Can you open it? Vivia placed her hand on the door. It wasn't a physical touch to find a mechanism. Her eyes were closed, her expression intense. The light from within seemed to respond, the colors brightening, the pulsing quickening. The door hissed open. Inside, the lab was dominated by a large containment field. Currently failing, sparks intermittently flying from its emitters. And at its center, floating serenely, was the source of the light. It was a small, crystalline creature, no bigger than Talon's two fists clasped together. It was multifaceted like a perfectly cut gem, and it glowed from within, its light shifting, pulsing in rhythm with an unheard beat. It was beautiful, and it radiated an almost unbearable sense of loneliness and fear. This was their turning point, the third party. An orphan child of the stars. Sparky. Talon breathed, the name coming to him unbidden. Vivia stepped forward slowly, her hand outstretched, not to touch, but as a gesture of peace. It is young, she said, her voice softer than Talon had ever heard it, and terrified. Her empathic resonance was clearly connecting with the creature. The light from Sparky shifted, a soft azure washing over Vivia, and she visibly relaxed, a subtle easing of the tension in her shoulders. Suddenly, the ship lurched violently. Explosions rocked the Pathfinder from outside. Concord reinforcements. Vivia snapped, her warrior persona returning instantly. They're trying to breach the hole directly into the lab. Grave, get the researcher to my ship. I will secure the entity. Secure it how? Talon yelled over the roar of another blast. Vivia didn't answer. She moved towards Sparky, her own form beginning to shimmer. She was altering her density, not to become hard, but almost porous, ethereal. The light from Sparky seemed to flow towards her, to merge with her aura. It was an astonishing sight. She was becoming a living conduit, a shield of empathic energy. Talon knew he couldn't waste time. He half-carried, half-dragged the fading researcher back towards the airlock, where the glacial shard was now docked, its ramp extended. The Concord was already cutting through the hole nearby. He had to trust Vivia. Their rivalry felt like a distant memory, burned away by the immediate, overwhelming danger and the profound mystery of the creature they had found. They were no longer competitors, they were allies, forced together by circumstance, and the desperate need to protect this innocent, alien life. The turning point had arrived, not as a gentle shift, but as a detonation, throwing them into a desperate fight for survival, and for the soul of a creature made of light. Cooperation was no longer a choice, it was their only hope. The airlock cycled, and Talon bundled the injured researcher into one of the glacial shard's med bunks. Automated medical systems engaging. The ship's calm voice announced. He raced to the cockpit, his heart pounding. Through the main viewport, he saw two more Concord cruisers joining the initial attackers, their forms sleek and predatory against the chaotic backdrop of the iron maze. The Stardust Drifter, still docked to the Pathfinder, looked pathetically vulnerable. Vivia, what's your status? Talon yelled into the internal comm. We need to get out of here, now. A moment of static, then Vivia's voice, strained but clear. Entity secured, preparing for extraction. The Concord are attempting to override the Pathfinder's lab containment systems remotely. They want Sparky intact then? Talon surmised. He powered up the glacial shard's engines, his fingers flying across controls that were subtly different from his own ship's, more integrated, more organic in their responsiveness. I'm ready to punch it on your mark. Another explosion closer this time rocked the glacial shard. They've breached the Pathfinder's lab deck. Talon shouted. I am aware, Grave. Vivia's voice came back, tight with effort. Hold. Almost there. Talon could only imagine what she was doing. Her empathic connection with Sparky. Her ability to shift her density. She was likely trying to coax the creature out of its failing containment, perhaps even partially merging with its energy to shield it. It was an incredible risk. Then, she was there, striding onto the glacial shard's bridge, her movements fluid and urgent. In her arms, cradled gently, pulsed Sparky. The crystalline entity was dimmer now, its light soft and contained, as if Vivia herself was dampening its output, protecting it. Her face was pale, and there were new lines of strain around her eyes, but her resolve was absolute. Shield the airlock. Disengage from the Yar's Pathfinder. She ordered, her voice regaining some of its usual command. She carefully placed Sparky into a specialized, softly glowing alcove on the bridge that seemed designed for just such a purpose, perhaps a Glacian meditation nook, now repurposed. Sparky pulsed once, a gentle turquoise, and settled. Airlock sealed. Disengaging. Talon confirmed, firing maneuvering thrusters. The glacial shard pulled away from the dying research vessel, just as a massive explosion ripped through the Pathfinder's midsection. The Concord was not being subtle. They're firing on the Pathfinder directly, Talon exclaimed. Trying to destroy any evidence, or maybe just flush us out, or they believe we are still aboard. Vivia said, strapping herself into the co-pilot's seat. Plot an escape vector, Grave. Prioritize evasion over speed. The iron maze is our only ally now. Talon's fingers danced over the navigation console. The maze is a double-edged sword. It hides us, but it can also trap us. Their ships are faster, more heavily armed, but their pilots do not possess empathic resonance with the maze's energies. Vivia countered. I can anticipate the shifts, the gravitic traps. You will fly, I will guide. And so began their desperate flight. Talon, with his innate piloting skill and adaptability, pushed this glacial shard through impossibly tight passages, dodging collapsing asteroid clusters and sudden magnetic bursts. Vivia, her eyes closed in concentration, her hands resting lightly on her console, called out warnings and course corrections, her voice a calm counterpoint to the chaos outside. Hard to port, Grave. A magnetic fissure is opening. Now increase thrust, there's a gravitic wave approaching from starboard. She was incredible. She wasn't just reading sensors, she was feeling the iron maze, her empathic abilities giving them an edge that raw technology couldn't match. Talon, despite his initial friction with her, found himself developing a grudging, then growing, respect for her capabilities. Her rigid adherence to protocol, he now realized, was perhaps a cultural coping mechanism for a species that experienced the universe with such overwhelming sensory input. Structure brought order to a potentially chaotic internal world. Sparky, in its alcove, pulsed softly, its colors shifting in response to Vivia's empathic state, calm blues when she was focused, flickers of anxious orange when a Concord blast came too close. It was as if the small creature was tethered to her emotional state, a living barometer of their peril. "They're gaining on us," Talon reported, glancing at the tactical display. 4 Concord cruisers were relentlessly pursuing them. "Their targeting solutions are getting more accurate. They are learning the maze's patterns, or they have superior predictive algorithms," Vivia observed. "We need to do something unorthodox." Talon grinned, a flash of his usual daring returning. "Unorthodox? Now you're speaking my language, Pegasus. I might have an idea. It involves my specialized area of interest, warp drive theory," Vivia asked, opening her eyes, a flicker of curiosity in their depths. "Precisely," Talon said. "The magnetic fields in this maze are incredibly intense and variable. If we could create a contained, localized warp distortion, not for travel, but as odd defensive measure, a sort of gravitic bomb." Vivia considered this. The energy requirements would be immense, and the risk of creating an uncontrolled singularity, high, Talon admitted, but less high than being blasted to pieces by the Concord. "Your ship's power core is significantly more advanced than the Stardust drifters. It might be able to handle a controlled microburst. I'd need to modify the shield emitters to focus the distortion." Vivia looked at him, then at Sparky, which pulsed a concerned yellow. "The Cognitive Concord suppresses such unorthodox ideas, Grave. They fear what they cannot control. Your theories, they would deem them heretical?" "All the more reason to use them," Talon said, a challenging glint in his eye. Vivia gave a rare, almost imperceptible nod. "Proceed. I will monitor the ship's systems and attempt to use my density alteration to reinforce key structural points if the feedback is too severe." This was a new level of cooperation, a melding of his theoretical brilliance with her unique biological capabilities. They were no longer just pilot and navigator, they were a synergistic team. The forced proximity, the shared danger, was forging a bond between them, chipping away at the walls of rivalry and cultural misunderstanding. For the next hour, which felt like an eternity, they worked in frantic, focused silence, punctuated only by Vivia's course corrections and Talon's muttered calculations. He rerouted power, reconfigured shield modulators, his mind alive with complex equations and intuitive leaps. Vivia, meanwhile, not only guided the ship through the treacherous maze, but also seemed to be subtly altering the glacial shard's internal structure, her hands glowing faintly as she touched bulkheads, making them resonate with a low thrumming sound. She was reinforcing the ship from the inside out, preparing it for the immense stress of Talon's gambit. Sparky, sensing the intense concentration and the rising tension, began to pulse with a rapid, multicolored light, its fear now mixed with a strange, supportive energy that seemed to flow towards both Talon and Vivia. Vivia looked at the creature, a soft smile touching her lips. "It is offering encouragement," she murmured, a note of wonder in her voice. "Its empathic output is surprisingly strong for one so small. Maybe it knows we're its only hope," Talon said, his fingers flying across the console. "Almost there, rerouting primary energy conduits, now." The glacial shard shuddered violently. Lights flickered. A deep groan echoed through the hull. "Hold on," Talon yelled. He slammed his hand down on an activation panel, firing micro-warp pulse. Outside behind them, a small point of intense blackness appeared, then rapidly expanded, distorting space, light, and magnetism in a chaotic, contained implosion. The pursuing Concord ships, caught completely off guard, were thrown into disarray. 2 of them collided, their shields flaring and failing. A third was sucked into the collapsing warp bubble and vanished with a silent, terrifying finality. The 4th, heavily damaged, veered off, retreating from the inexplicable spatial anomaly. Silence descended on the glacial shard's bridge, broken only by the panting breaths of Talon and Vivia, and the soft, celebratory rainbow pulse emanating from Sparky. Did that just work?" Talon asked, stunned by the effectiveness of his own desperate theory. Vivia slowly opened her eyes. She looked pale but exhilarated. The Concord squadron has been neutralized, she confirmed, a hint of awe in her voice. Your unorthodox idea, Grave, was remarkably effective. Talon grinned, a wave of relief washing over him. Teamwork. Pegasus, your ship, your guidance, my crazy theories. He looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not just the rigid Glacian officer, but a woman of incredible strength, resilience, and a depth he was only beginning to comprehend. She met his gaze, and for a moment, the professional distance between them dissolved. In her eyes, he saw not just respect, but something warmer, something that mirrored the growing connection he felt towards her. The Iron Maze had thrown them together as rivals, but the threat of the Concord and the shared responsibility for Sparky had forged them into something more. The initial barriers were crumbling, and trust, fragile but real, was beginning to take root in the hostile soil of their shared ordeal. Vivia's hidden depths were slowly being unveiled, not just her empathic abilities, but a capacity for trust and collaboration that her rigid cultural upbringing had perhaps suppressed. And Talon, the ambitious theorist, was discovering that some ambitions like protecting the innocent and connecting with another soul were far more compelling than any promotion. With the immediate threat of the Concord cruisers neutralized by Talon's audacious micro-warp pulse, a fragile calm settled over the glacial shard. They were deep within the Iron Maze, the shifting asteroids their only unreliable sanctuary. The injured researcher from this Pathfinder was stable in the med bay, but unconscious. Sparky pulsed contentedly in its alcove, its light a soothing balm on their frayed nerves. We need to find a secure location to make repairs and assess our next move, Vivia said, her voice still holding a trace of the adrenaline from their escape. The warp pulse caused significant strain on the power core, and several secondary systems are offline. Agreed. Talon replied, running diagnostics. The shield emitters are fried, but the main drive is surprisingly intact. Your structural reinforcements must have helped absorb the worst of it. He looked at her with open admiration. How did you do that? Altering the ship's density. Vivia flexed her fingers, which still shimmered faintly. Glacian physiology allows for resonant bonding with certain crystalline and metallic structures. I was able to temporarily enhance the molecular cohesion of the ship's frame in critical areas. It is tiring. She leaned back in her seat, a rare sign of fatigue. I can imagine, Talon said softly. He found himself wanting to understand more about her people, their unique abilities. The cultural quirks that had once seemed like barriers now appeared as fascinating facets of a complex individual. Your empathic abilities with the maze. With Sparky, it's extraordinary, Vivia. He used her first name without thinking, and she didn't correct him. A faint flush, like the aurora on a winter moon, touched her pale cheeks. It is simply a part of who I am, Talon. The use of his first name in return was a small but significant shift. My people have always lived in harmony with environments that other species find hostile. We listen with more than our ears. They found a relatively stable hollow within a massive, hollowed-out asteroid, its interior laced with dormant, non-magnetic crystals that absorb sensor scans, effectively cloaking them. Talon initiated repairs on the shield emitters, his intellectual curiosity now fully engaged in the practical application of his theories. Vivia, after ensuring the researcher was still stable, sat near Sparky's alcove. The small crystalline entity pulsed gently, and Vivia's eyes were closed, her expression serene. She seemed to be in a state of silent communion. Talon watched them for a moment. The connection between Vivia and Sparky was palpable. It was more than just empathic understanding, it was a bond. He realized that Vivia's species diplomat potential was not just about formal negotiations. It was about this deep, intuitive connection with other forms of life, especially those that communicated beyond spoken language. What are they saying? Talon asked quietly, not wanting to disturb them. Vivia opened her eyes, a soft smile on her lips. Sparky, it is not its name, but it responds to the affection in the sound. It is an astral weaver, young as I said. Its kind are born in nebulae, weaving light and energy into consciousness. It was orphaned when its nursery cluster was disrupted by a stellar event. The Pathfinder crew found it, were studying it, trying to understand its language of light and emotion. And the Concord wants it because. Talon prompted. Vivia's smile faded. Astral weavers, when they mature, can manipulate vast amounts of energy. They can create stable wormholes, power entire cities or weapons. The Concord sees Sparky not as a life form, but as an infinitely renewable power source for their projects. Her voice was laced with a cold anger that Talon had not heard before. The thought police were not just suppressing ideas, they were willing to exploit and destroy innocent life for their goals. Their ultimate weapon. Talon murmured, remembering the hushed whispers and classified reports he'd sometimes come across in his research. A weapon to enforce absolute conformity across the galaxy. Sparky was the key. What cannot let them have it? Vivia stated, her gaze locking with Talon's. It wasn't an order, it was a shared conviction. Over the next few days, as Talon worked on repairs and Vivia recovered her strength, they fell into a new rhythm. The forced cooperation had given way to a more natural partnership. They shared watches, rationed supplies, and talked. Talon spoke of his theories, his dreams of unlocking faster-than-light travel that didn't rip reality apart, his frustrations with the slow pace of accepted science. Vivia, in turn, began to open up about her culture. She explained the Glacian emphasis on order and discipline as a way to manage their powerful empathic senses, which could be overwhelming in a galaxy teeming with chaotic emotions. She described the beauty of her ice world home, the intricate societal structures, and the deep spiritual connection Glacians felt with the fundamental forces of the universe. Our ability to alter density, she explained one cycle, as they shared a nutrient-paced meal, is tied to our empathic control. To become intangible, one must achieve a state of perfect emotional neutrality, a detachment from the physical. To become diamond hard, one must focus intent, pure will. The etheric dance you witnessed or heard of, it is a test of this mastery, a meditation in motion. So your rigid command structure. Talon began to understand. It's not just about efficiency, it's about maintaining that internal balance. Precisely. Vivia affirmed. Unquestioning obedience to a clear command minimizes emotional conflict, allowing us to focus our abilities. For a species diplomat, however, one must learn to navigate the emotions of others, to understand and influence, without losing one's own center. It is a difficult path. Talon found himself fascinated. Her biology and culture were inextricably linked. He also saw the immense pressure she must be under, balancing her innate abilities with the strictures of her society. His respect for her grew, and with it, a warmth that went beyond professional admiration. He found her intellect sharp, her quiet determination inspiring, and her rare smiles captivating. One evening, while Talon was meticulously recalibrating the damaged shield array, Vivia approached him. Sparky was with her, not in her arms, but floating gently beside her shoulder, its light a soft, inquisitive blue. Talon. Vivia began, her voice hesitant. There is something else. The Pathfinder's logs. I managed to decrypt a protected file before we abandoned ship. It detailed their primary research, beyond just Sparky. Talon stopped his work, intrigued. What was it? A device, Vivia said, her expression serious. An experimental technology based on ancient, proscribed texts. A device capable of transferring consciousness. Talon stared at her, his mind reeling. A consciousness transfer device. The ethical implications alone were staggering. Transferring consciousness, between bodies or into a machine. The specifics are unclear, Vivia admitted. The research was in its nascent stages. Highly dangerous, highly unstable. But the Concord, their encrypted communications, which the Pathfinder also intercepted, suggest they are desperately seeking such a device. They believe it is the key to controlling the Astral Weavers, perhaps even to imprinting their own agents into positions of power across the galaxy. The stakes had just escalated exponentially. The Concord wasn't just after a power source, they were after the ultimate tool of infiltration and control, and the Pathfinder had been on the verge of creating it. Do you think they got it? Talon asked, his voice grim. From the Pathfinder. Vivia shook her head. The logs indicate the prototype was unstable and self-destructed during the initial Concord attack, just before the energy pulse we witnessed. That pulse, it may have been the device overloading. A small measure of relief, but the knowledge was still chilling. The Concord was hunting for this technology. And now, they had a living astral weaver, Sparky, who might be vulnerable to it if the Concord ever perfected their own version. Sparky pulsed a series of rapid, agitated crimson flashes, then nudged Vivia's cheek with its crystalline body. Vivia reached up and gently stroked its smooth surface. It is afraid, she murmured. It senses the danger this thought-stealing represents. Talon felt a surge of protectiveness, not just for Sparky, but for Vivia too. She was so strong, so capable, Yet she carried the weight of her empathic perceptions and the burden of this new, terrifying knowledge. He reached out, his hand covering hers where it rested on Sparky. It was an impulsive gesture, but it felt right. Vivia's breath hitched. Her skin was cool beneath his, but a subtle warmth spread from the contact. She looked up at him, her usually guarded violet eyes wide and vulnerable. In that moment, surrounded by the cold, crystalline beauty of their hiding place, with the silent, empathic presence of Sparky between them, the air crackled with an unspoken tension. It was more than just shared danger, it was the burgeoning awareness of a deeper connection, a pull that transcended species and circumstance. The shared challenge of surviving the iron maze, of protecting Sparky, had stripped away their initial prejudices. Talon's intellectual curiosity was now matched by a profound respect for Vivia's strength and unique gifts. Vivia, in turn, was seeing beyond Talon's sometimes brash ambition to the brilliant, adaptable mind and the surprisingly compassionate heart beneath. The romantic tension, once a subtle undercurrent, was now a palpable force, drawing them closer, even as the shadow of the Cognitive Concord and their terrifying ambitions loomed larger than ever. Their trust had deepened, and with it, the first, tentative stirrings of love in a galaxy determined to tear them apart. The days bled into weeks within their crystalline sanctuary. Repairs on the glacial shard were progressing, but Talon knew their respite was temporary. The Concord would be hunting them relentlessly, especially now that they had Sparky. The knowledge of the consciousness transfer device added a horrifying new dimension to their enemies' capabilities. The close confines and shared purpose continued to erode the barriers between Talon and Vivia. They found solace in each other's company, the earlier professional friction replaced by an easy camaraderie that often tipped into something more profound. Talon would explain complex warp field equations, and Vivia would listen, her violet eyes surprisingly intent, occasionally asking questions that showed a keen, intuitive grasp of concepts far outside her usual purview. In return, she would describe the subtle energy currents of the void, or the intricate emotional tapestries she perceived from distant, unknown consciousnesses, painting verbal pictures that expanded Talon's understanding of the universe in ways no textbook ever could. Sparky became the unspoken heart of their small, fugitive family. The crystalline entity communicated its simple needs and affections through shifting colors and gentle pulses of warmth, often nudging one or the other of them as if offering comfort or encouragement. Vivia, with her profound empathic connection, was its primary interpreter and caregiver. But Talon found himself growing deeply attached to the little creature as well. Its innocence was a stark contrast to the darkness of the Concord. One cycle, as Vivia was meditating, her form subtly shimmering as she regulated her internal energies, Talon found himself watching her. The way the faint light from Sparky played across her features, the serene focus on her face, the almost imperceptible hum that seemed to emanate from her when she was deeply attuned, it all fascinated him. He was a man of science, of logic, but Vivia Pegasus was a living embodiment of mysteries he was only beginning to appreciate. Later, while they were reviewing star charts, trying to plot a course out of the iron maze that wouldn't lead them directly into a Concord patrol, their hands brushed as they reached for the same control panel. A jolt, like a static discharge but far more pleasant, passed between them. Vivia pulled her hand back quickly, a faint blush rising on her neck. Talon's heart hammered. The attraction was undeniable, a magnetic pull as strong as any force in the maze. Vivia, he began, his voice a little husky. She looked at him, her eyes searching his. Talon, this situation, it is unusual. Unusual is my specialty, he said, a small smile playing on his lips. But this, what's happening between us, it feels more than unusual. It feels significant. Before Vivia could respond, an alarm blared through the glacial shard. A proximity alert. Concord Patrol, Talon swore, jumping to the tactical display. A single scout ship, but it's close. Too close. It must have picked up our residual energy signature from when we entered this asteroid. Vivia was instantly all business, her personal feelings momentarily suppressed by ingrained training. Can we evade? Not without them spotting us. They're practically on top of us, and our shields are still not at full strength. Talon's mind raced. They couldn't fight, not a fully operational Concord vessel. They couldn't run without being seen. There is one option, Vivia said slowly, her gaze fixed on the approaching enemy ship. A high-risk, high-reward maneuver. It will require perfect synchronization. I'm listening, Talon said, trusting her tactical acumen implicitly now. My people sometimes use a technique called an echo shroud, Vivia explained. Be precisely modulating our density in concert with the ship's own energy field. We can create a temporary, localized cloaking effect not by bending light, but by becoming harmonically invisible to most active sensors. It is incredibly difficult to maintain, especially under stress, and it requires immense concentration from the Glacian involved. Talon looked at her, understanding the implication. You'd have to do it, while I pilot us out of here. Yes, she confirmed. The ship will be an extension of my own physical state. You will need to fly with extreme precision, matching my empathic guidance, anticipating my limitations as I sustain the shroud. It was an immense risk. If her concentration wavered, if the shroud failed at the wrong moment, they'd be exposed and helpless. But it was their only chance. Let's do it, Talon said, his voice firm. He had complete faith in her. Vivia nodded. She moved to the center of the bridge, her eyes closing. Sparky, sensing the gravity of the moment, pulsed a steady, supportive gold. Vivia began to shimmer, her form becoming less distinct, her outline blurring. The ship around them seemed to hum in response, the very metal of the bulkheads vibrating with a subtle energy. The shroud is forming, Vivia murmured, her voice distant, as if coming from a great depth. Their sensors will register only residual radiation, old echoes. Move now, Talon. Smoothly. Follow my empathic trace. Talon's hands were steady on the controls. He eased the Waz glacial shard out of their hiding place. The Concord scout ship visible on his screen, its search pattern sweeping dangerously close. He could feel Vivia's presence not just beside him, but around him, a strange, ethereal connection to the ship itself. He felt the subtle shifts in the ship's energy field as she manipulated it, her empathic voice, guiding his hands, suggesting minute course corrections before his instruments even registered the need. They slipped past the Concord scout like a ghost, a whisper in the void. Talon held his breath, every nerve endings tingling. The strain on Vivia must be immense. He could feel it as a faint tremor in the empathic link, a tightness in his own chest. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Finally, the Concord scout moved on, its sensors finding nothing. Clear. Talon breathed, relief washing over him. We're clear. The shimmering around Vivia subsided. She swayed, her form solidifying, and Talon was by her side in an instant, catching her as her knees buckled. She was ice cold to the touch, her face pale as death, her breathing shallow. Vivia, he cried, alarm bells ringing in his head. He eased her into her chair. Sparky rushed to her side, pressing against her arm, pulsing with frantic, concerned violet light. Just depleted, she whispered, her eyelids fluttering. The shroud takes a heavy toll. Talon chafed her hands, trying to bring warmth back to them. Her skin felt like chilled marble. You were incredible, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You saved us. Her eyes open, focusing on his face. A faint smile touched her lips. Wes saved us, Talon. He leaned closer, his concern for her overriding everything else. Rest now. I'll keep watch. She nodded weakly, her head lolling against the headrest. Sparky nudged her hand, and she managed a faint answering pressure. Talon watched over her, his heart aching with a mixture of fear and a fierce, protective tenderness. The danger had passed for now, but the cost had been high. As Vivia slowly recovered over the next few hours, the unspoken tension between them returned, charged with a new intensity. They had faced death together, relied on each other in the most profound way, and the experience had irrevocably altered their relationship. The professional respect had deepened into a powerful emotional bond, and the romantic attraction was now an undeniable force. Later, when she was stronger, Vivia found Talon staring out at the swirling dust clouds of the iron maze. Sparky was asleep in its alcove, its light a soft, steady throb. Talon, she said softly. He turned. You should be resting. I am better, she assured him. The experience, it clarifies things. She stepped closer, her gaze direct, unwavering. What you said earlier, about what is happening between us feeling significant. I feel it too. Talon's breath caught. He reached out, his fingers gently tracing the line of her jaw. Her skin was still cool, but no longer deathly so. Vivia, he whispered. She leaned into his touch, her eyes fluttering closed for a moment. When she opened them, they were shining with an emotion that made his heart soar. My people are not known for overt displays of affection, she said, a hint of her old formality touched with a new vulnerability. Our connections are often empathic, unspoken. But with you, Talon, it is different, stronger. More human, perhaps. Is that a bad thing? He asked, his thumb stroking her cheek. No, she breathed. It is overwhelming. And wonderful. He drew her closer, his arms going around her waist. She fit against him perfectly, her slender strength a counterpoint to his own. He could feel the faint, unique thrum of her Glacian energy, a subtle vibration that resonated deep within him. Vivia Pegasus, he murmured, his lips close to her ear. You are the most extraordinary woman I have ever met. She tilted her head back, looking up at him. And you, Talon Grave, are a dangerously unorthodox and surprisingly compelling man. He chuckled a low, warm sound. Is that a compliment from a Glacian? Yes. A very high one. And then he kissed her. It was a kiss that started gently, tentatively, a question asked and answered. Her lips were soft, cool at first, then warming under his. He felt a jolt not of energy, but of pure, undiluted emotion, his, mingling, amplifying. She responded with a surprising passion, her arms circling his neck, her body pressing closer. It was a kiss that spoke of shared danger, of growing trust, of burgeoning love in the heart of a hostile universe. As they kissed, Vivia's unique biology added an unexpected dimension to their intimacy. Her skin, under his touch, seemed to soften, to lose some of its usual resilience, becoming almost yielding, incredibly sensitive. He felt a faint shimmer against his hands where he held her, a subtle shift in her density, as if she was unconsciously lowering her emotional and physical barriers for him, allowing him a level of closeness few, if any, had ever experienced. It was an act of profound trust, a silent offering of her truest self. When they finally broke apart, breathless, they simply held each other, the silence filled with the weight of their shared emotions. Sparky pulsed a soft, contented rose light from its alcove, as if giving its blessing. The Concord will still be hunting us, Vivia said, her voice a little shaky, her head resting against his chest. And this changes things. It changes everything. Talon agreed, holding her tighter. But it also gives us something more to fight for. He knew, with a certainty that settled deep in his bones, that he would do anything to protect her, to protect Sparky, to fight for the future they were tentatively, miraculously, building together amidst the chaos. Their connection was no longer just a spark, it was a growing flame, a beacon of hope against the encroaching darkness of the Cognitive Concord. They had acknowledged their feelings, and that acknowledgement had forged an unbreakable bond, one that would be tested to its limits in the trials to come. The relative peace within their asteroid sanctuary was shattered not by the Concord, but by a dwindling chronometer. Their supplies were running low, and the glacial shard, despite Talon's repairs, was not equipped for indefinite deep space isolation. They needed to break out of the iron maze, find a friendly port, or at least resupply. The problem was any known port could be a trap, a place where the Concord's influence reached. The researcher, Vivia said one cycle, referring to Dr. Thorne, the scientist they'd rescued from the Pathfinder, who was now conscious but still weak. She mentioned a contact, a former colleague who went into hiding after expressing unorthodox views on consciousness. Someone who might be able to help us, someone outside the Concord's usual networks. Talon was intrigued. Does she know where to find this colleague? A coded location, Vivia replied. A place called Haven, in the Krell Nebula. It's uncharted, known only to a select few who operate outside Galactic Federation jurisdiction. Uncharted, outside jurisdiction, sounds promisingly dangerous, Talon said with a wry grin. And exactly what we need. The Krell Nebula is on the far side of this sector. It'll be a long trip, and we'll have to cross Concord-patrolled shipping lanes. But it is our best option, Vivia stated, her gaze firm. Dr. Thorne believes her colleague might have insights into the consciousness transfer technology, perhaps even a way to protect Sparky from it, or to counter the Concord's plans. The stakes surrounding the consciousness transfer device were becoming terrifyingly clear. If the Concord perfected it, they could not only control the astral weavers, but could also replace key figures throughout the galaxy with their own agents, their minds overwritten, their free will extinguished. It was a silent, insidious invasion. Their preparations to leave the Iron Maze were made with a new sense of shared purpose, colored by the deepening romantic connection between Talon and Vivia. There were stolen moments, a lingering touch as they passed tools, a shared smile over a successful system diagnostic, quiet conversations late into the ship's night cycle, where where they spoke of their hopes and fears. Vivia, once so guarded, now allowed herself moments of vulnerability with Talon, sharing her anxieties about Sparky's future and her own role in the unfolding conflict. Her empathic resonance, once a tool for professional assessment, now allowed her to feel the depth of Talon's growing affection for her, a warmth that soothed the anxieties her Glacian upbringing had instilled about emotional openness. During one such quiet moment, Vivia demonstrated another facet of her density-shifting ability. They were discussing the Concord's tactics, the cold, calculating nature of their evil. Talon felt a wave of frustration and anger. Vivia reached out, her hand covering his. Her skin felt warm, almost soft, not the usual cool resilience. Talon, she said gently, your emotions are strong. Understandable. Then, her hand seemed to flow to change. The texture altered, becoming incredibly smooth, like polished jade, yet pliant. It was a comforting, grounding sensation. My people can also alter our tactile interface. To soothe, to calm. When words are insufficient. He turned his hand, lacing his fingers with hers. The sensation was unique, intimate. That's amazing, Vivia. A rare, genuine smile lit her face. It is a small thing, but sometimes, small things matter. Their journey out of the Iron Maze was fraught with peril. They narrowly avoided several Concord patrols, Talon's piloting skills and Vivia's empathic navigation working in perfect, unspoken harmony. Sparky, sensing their tension, would often emit calming blue or green light, its presence a silent reassurance. Dr. Thorne, though still weak, provided crucial information about Concord tactics and potential weaknesses, her own defiance against the thought police fueling her desire to help them. They finally broke free of the Iron Maze, the vast, star-dusted canvas of open space, a welcome, if intimidating sight. But their relief was short-lived. As they plotted their course towards the Krell Nebula, a priority alert flashed across their comm system. It was a general galactic distress signal, but one that made Talon's blood run cold. It's from a research station near the Kepler 186 system, he said, his voice grim. Station Epsilon. I know people there. They were working on advanced energy field harmonics, theories related to consciousness. Vivia's eyes widened. The Concord. It has to be, Talon said. They're expanding their search for anything related to consciousness manipulation or powerful energy sources. A fierce debate ensued. Their primary mission was to get Sparky and Dr. Thorne to Haven. Intervening at Station Epsilon was a massive risk. They were one ship still not fully repaired against unknown Concord forces. We cannot abandon them, Talon argued, his ambition now channeled into a protective fury. If the Concord is there, they'll be taking researchers, confiscating data, or worse. The risk to Sparky is too great. Vivia countered, her protective instincts focused on the small entity that had become so precious to them. Our priority must be its safety. This was her ingrained Glacian pragmatism, the need to protect the most vulnerable asset. And what if the Concord gets something from Epsilon that helps them capture Sparky later? Talon shot back. Or helps them perfect that damned consciousness device. We might be Sparky's only hope now, by stopping them. Their first major disagreement since acknowledging their feelings. The tension was thick. Sparky pulsed an anxious, flickering yellow. Dr. Thorne, listening from the med bay via comm, spoke up, her voice weak but firm. Talon is right. The head of research at Epsilon, Dr. Lena Hansen, she was my mentor. She was working on defensive, empathic shielding. If the Concord gets her work, or her, Vivia looked from Talon's impassioned face to the worried light of Sparky, then to the comm speaker relaying Dr. Thorne's plea. Her internal conflict was visible. Her rigid command structure would dictate prioritizing the established mission. But her growing empathy, her connection with Talon, and her own burgeoning defiance against the Concord, pulled her in another direction. Finally, she let out a slow breath. The risk is extreme, but the potential cost of inaction is also unacceptable. She looked at Talon, a new resolve hardening her gaze. We will attempt a reconnaissance of Station Epsilon. Gather intelligence. If a rescue is feasible, and if it does not unacceptably compromise Sparky's safety, we will consider it. But we will not engage in a prolonged battle. Talon felt a surge of gratitude and love for her. She was compromising, adapting, finding a balance between her ingrained caution and her growing courage. Thank you, Vivia. She gave a curt nod, but her eyes softened. Prepare for a high-speed run to Kepler 186. And Talon, be ready for anything. Their journey to Station Epsilon was a tense, silent dash through hyperspace. The stakes were higher than ever. The Concord was not just a faceless enemy, they were actively hunting for the very knowledge and beings that Talon and Vivia now protected. Their romantic connection, forged in shared adversity, was about to be tested in the fires of a direct confrontation, as they made a conscious choice to deviate from their path of escape and stand against the darkness, a choice driven by their shared values and their deepening love for each other and for the innocent lives caught in the Concord's oppressive grip. The road to the Krell Nebula and Haven would have to wait. First, they had to face the music at Station Epsilon. Station Epsilon hung in the black, a multifaceted jewel against the distant glow of the Kepler 186 star. But it was a flawed jewel. Scorch marks marred its hull, and several docking bays were clearly damaged. Two ominous, black Concord cruisers maintained a silent, menacing patrol around it. They've established a blockade. Talon observed grimly from the Glacial Shards Bridge. Standard Concord procedure. Secure the asset, eliminate resistance, control the information flow. Vivia's empathic senses were extended, her brow furrowed in concentration. I feel fear. Despair. But also pockets of defiance. Strong minds resisting. The station is not entirely subdued. Sparky, nestled in its alcove, reflected her unease with a dim, troubled amber light. Digar, Thorn. Talon calmed the med bay. Can you give us any specifics on Station Epsilon's layout? Any back doors the Concord might not know about? There's an old maintenance conduit. Dr. Thorne's voice came back, stronger now. Near the solar array on the ventral side. Seldom used. It leads deep into the station's sublevels, near the primary research labs where Lena Dr. Hansen would be. That's our way in, Talon decided. Vivia, can you use your echo shroud to get us close enough to that solar array without being detected by those cruisers? Vivia nodded, her expression resolute. It will be a strain, but yes, we must be swift. The shroud cannot be maintained indefinitely, especially with their active scans so concentrated. One problem, Talon said. If we both go, who watches Sparky? And Dr. Thorne needs monitoring. Vivia looked at Sparky, then back at Talon. A silent understanding passed between them. I will go, she said. My abilities are better suited for infiltration and potential close-quarters engagement if necessary. You are the superior pilot, Talon. Your role will be to get me in, maintain a hidden position, and be ready for immediate extraction. Sparky and Dr. Thorne will be safer with you, on the ship. Talon felt a knot of anxiety tighten in his chest. He didn't want her to go alone, but he knew she was right. Her density shifting and empathic abilities made her uniquely qualified. Agreed? He said, his voice tight. But you take a comm link directly to me, highest encryption. And Vivia, no heroics. Get in, find Dr. Hansen if you can, gather intel, get out. Our priority is still Haven. Understood, Commander, she said, a ghost of a smile touching her lips at his unconscious slip into a more formal address, a sign of his anxiety. Then, more softly, I will be careful, Talon. The approach to Station Epsilon was a masterclass in stealth and coordination. Vivia initiated the Echo Shroud, the glacial shard becoming a phantom in the void. Talon piloted with breathtaking precision, navigating debris fields and sensor blind spots, guided by Vivia's empathic whispers that alerted him to fluctuations in the Concord cruiser's scan patterns. They reached the ventral solar array undetected. Vivia prepared to leave clad in a dark, form-fitting environmental suit. She paused at the airlock, turning back to Talon. He stepped towards her, his heart aching with a mixture of fear and pride. Be safe, he murmured, his hand instinctively reaching for hers. She took his hand, her grip surprisingly strong. Her skin, he noted, was already beginning to take on a slightly more resilient texture, a subconscious preparation for the dangers ahead. I will. And you, Talon, trust your instincts. If things go wrong, I'll get you out, he finished for her, his gaze unwavering. I promise. She leaned in and kissed him, a brief, fierce kiss that spoke volumes of their shared determination and the love that now bound them. For love and new life? She whispered against his lips, echoing the unspoken creed that had come to define their struggle. Then, she was gone, slipping into the maintenance conduit like a shadow. Talon maneuvered the glacial shard into the shadow of a large, damaged antenna array, powering down all non-essential systems to minimize their energy signature. Now, all he could do was wait, monitor the comm, and trust in Vivia. The minutes stretched into an agonizing eternity. Sparky pulsed a worried, rhythmic orange, its anxiety a mirror of his own. Inside Station Epsilon, Vivia moved with silent, fluid grace. The maintenance conduit was dark, cramped, and smelled of stale air and ozone. Her empathic senses were her guide, picking up the faint emotional traces of the station's inhabitants' fear, anger, despair, but also stubborn pockets of hope. She easily bypassed automated security systems, her ability to briefly phase her density, allowing her to slip through laser grids and pressure plates. She reached the sublevels near the primary research labs. Concord troopers patrolled the corridors, their movements precise, their voices flat and emotionless through their helmet comms. Vivia became like a ghost, flowing through shadows, her body sometimes taking on the texture and color of the bulkheads, making her nearly invisible. She heard snippets of Concord conversations. They were systematically interrogating researchers, confiscating data cores, and preparing a priority asset for transport. Dr. Hansen. Vivia located the lab where Dr. Hansen was being held. 2 Concord guards stood outside. She needed a distraction. Using her empathic abilities, she focused on a nearby power junction, creating a subtle overload. Alarms blared down the corridor, and one of the guards moved to investigate. Vivia waited for her moment, then, with blinding speed, she solidified her hand into a diamond-hard blade, striking the remaining guard at a precise nerve cluster at the base of his helmet. He crumpled without a sound. Before the other guard could react to the new silence, she did the same to him. She slipped into the lab. Dr. Lina Hansen, a woman with tired but defiant eyes, looked up from where she was bound to a chair. "Who?" "A friend of Dr. Thorne's," Vivia said quickly, her voice low. "We don't have much time." She began to work on Dr. Hansen's restraints, her fingers nimble. "They want my research on empathic dampening fields," Dr. Hansen said, her voice urgent. "They think they can use it to control, to nullify beings like your little friend Sparky, or even to break strong-willed individuals for their consciousness transfer." Vivia's blood ran cold. This was worse than they had imagined. If the Concord could nullify empathic abilities, beings like Sparky and Glacians like herself would be incredibly vulnerable. "Can you destroy your research?" Vivia asked. Dr. Hansen shook her head. "They've already copied most of it to a central data core, scheduled for upload to their flagship, but the core prototype of the dampener, it's in a secure vault here. If we can wipe that, it will set them back months, maybe years." This was the critical point. A rescue was one thing, a sabotage mission was another level of risk. Vivia thought of Talon, of Sparky, of the promise she'd made, but she also thought of the countless lives that would be devastated if the Concord perfected this empathic dampener alongside their consciousness transfer tech. "Where is this vault?" Vivia asked. Her decision made. Dr. Hansen gave her the location deep within the Concord's temporary command center on the station. It was heavily guarded. "This is too dangerous, Vivia." Talon's voice suddenly crackled in her ear, tight with anxiety. "I'm picking up increased Concord activity around your position. They know something's wrong. Talon, they have research here that could cripple beings like Sparky, make them defenseless against the consciousness transfer." Vivia transmitted back, her voice low and urgent. "I have to try and destroy it. Dr. Hansen knows how." "Vivia, no. Your mission was intel and rescue if feasible." "This is suicide!" Talon's voice was pleading. "Sometimes," Vivia said, her gaze meeting Dr. Hansen's determined one, "the most efficient path is not the safest. Trust me, Talon. We have to do this." She didn't wait for his reply. With Dr. Hansen guiding her, Vivia moved deeper into the heart of the Concord-controlled station. The risks were escalating, pulling them further from their goal of haven, but drawing them deeper into the fight against the Cognitive Concord. Vivia, the once rigidly protocol-bound Glacian, was now making command decisions based on her conscience and her growing understanding of the enemy's true depravity. Her love for Talon and her fierce protectiveness for Sparky fueled her courage, pushing her beyond limits she never knew she possessed. The stakes were no longer just personal, they were galactic. The Concord Command Center on Station Epsilon was a hive of activity. Troopers moved with disciplined haste, technicians monitored glowing consoles, and at the center of it all, a stern-faced Concord prefect oversaw the systematic stripping of the station's secrets. Vivia and Dr. Hansen, moving like wraiths through ventilation shafts and service tunnels, observed the scene. The secure vault containing the empathic dampener prototype was heavily guarded, its door a slab of reinforced alloy. "The data core with my research is being prepped for transfer to that cruiser, the Iron Will," Dr. Hansen whispered, pointing to a heavily armed Concord officer carrying a shielded data canister. "If we can't get to the prototype, maybe we can get to that core." Vivia assessed the situation. A direct assault on the vault was impossible. But the data core. The transfer shuttle is scheduled to depart in 20 minutes from Bay 7. She noted, her empathic senses picking up the logistical chatter. If we can create a diversion? Talon, Vivia calmed, her voice calm despite the storm raging within her. I need a significant distraction near docking Bay 7 in approximately 15 minutes. Something big enough to draw their attention, but not so big it brings the entire station down on our heads. There was a strained silence from Talon's end. Then, Vivia, this is insane. My warp pulse trick isn't something I can just whip up on demand, especially not with precision targeting like that, and the shields are still not optimal. I know it is a lot to ask, Talon, Vivia said, her voice softening. But this technology, it cannot be allowed to fall into their hands. Think of Sparky. Think of all the others. Another pause. Sparky, on the Glacial Shards bridge, let out a high-pitched, pleading trill of blue and gold light that Talon could almost feel through the calm. All right. Talon finally sighed, his voice tight with worry and reluctant resolve. I can try to overload one of the station's external power conduits near Bay 7. It'll cause a cascade failure in that section, maybe even a localized EMP. It'll be messy, and it'll definitely get their attention. But Vivia, you have to get out. Promise me? I promise, she said, her heart swelling with love for his courage and his trust in her. 15 minutes. The next 15 minutes were a blur of calculated risks and desperate improvisation. Vivia, using her ability to shift her density to an almost intangible state, slipped past sensor grids and guard patrols, with Dr. Hansen surprisingly agile for her age and recent ordeal, following close behind. They reached a maintenance access point overlooking Bay 7, just as Talon's diversion hit. A section of the station hull near Bay 7 erupted in a shower of sparks and a concussive blast. Alarms shrieked. Concord troopers scrambled, their disciplined formations breaking as they responded to the unexpected attack. The officer carrying the data core was momentarily stunned, dropping the canister. Now, Vivia hissed. She solidified, becoming a streak of motion. She took down 2 guards with precise, incapacitating strikes before anyone even registered her presence. Dr. Hansen, meanwhile, darted forward, snatching up the data canister. This way, Dr. Hansen urged, leading Vivia towards a secondary escape route, a waste reclamation chute that, she explained, would deposit them near the old maintenance conduit where Vivia had first entered. They were almost clear when the Concord prefect himself appeared, flanked by 2 heavily armed elite guards. The Glacian. The prefect snarled, his eyes burning with cold fury. And the traitor Hansen! Seize them! Retrieve the core! Vivia pushed Dr. Hansen towards the chute. I'll hold them off. Vivia, no! Dr. Hansen cried. Go! Vivia ordered, her voice ringing with command. She turned to face the prefect, her body shimmering as she prepared to shift her density. You will not have this technology. The elite guards opened fire. Vivia became a blur, her form hardening to deflect energy blasts, then becoming almost gaseous to evade physical attacks. She was a whirlwind of motion, a dervish of controlled fury, her Glacian combat skills, honed by years of discipline, now unleashed with a desperate intensity. She managed to disable 1 guard, but the other and the prefect pressed their advantage. An energy blast grazed her arm, and she cried out, her concentration flickering. Vivia! Talon's voice, frantic, in her ear. I'm reading weapon fire. What's happening? Minor complication? Vivia grunted, dodging another blast. The prefect is persistent. Dr. Hansen is clear with the core. Heading for extraction point. Get ready! She knew she couldn't beat them both, not for long. She needed to escape. She focused, shifting her density, preparing to become intangible enough to phase through the floor plating. But the prefect was ready. He activated a device on his wrist, and a high-frequency field enveloped Vivia. Her density shifting faltered, pain lancing through her. Glacian countermeasures. The prefect sneered. We are not entirely unprepared for your kind, species diplomat. He recognized her. Her cover as a simple operative was blown. Just as the remaining guard lunged, a section of the ceiling above them exploded inwards. Talon, wearing a light EVA suit and wielding a heavy-duty plasma cutter, dropped into the corridor, firing a precise burst that sent the guard sprawling. You define minor complication very loosely, Pegasus? Talon yelled, rushing to her side. Your timing is impeccable, Grave. Vivia gasped, clutching her arm. The prefect, momentarily stunned by Talon's sudden appearance, recovered quickly. So, the theorist joins the fray. 2 heretics for the price of 1. He raised his weapon, But before he could fire, Sparky, who Talon must have brought with him in a small, shielded carrier, let out an incredible, piercing shriek of pure energy and light from Talon's pack. The crystalline entity pulsed with an incandescent, furious white light that momentarily blinded everyone. The prefect cried out, stumbling back, his countermeasure device sparking and dying. "Let's go!" Talon grabbed Vivia's good arm, pulling her towards the breach he'd made in the ceiling, which led back to the maintenance tunnels. They scrambled through, Talon firing covering shots, Vivia fighting through the pain in her arm, and the disorienting effects of the prefect's device. They made it back to the glacial shard with seconds to spare, Concord fighters already swarming the area of Talon's entry point. Dr. Hansen was waiting, the precious data core clutched in her hands. Talon slammed the ship into high gear, Vivia collapsing into the co-pilot seat, Sparky nuzzling her cheek with gentle, apologetic blue pulses. "Report." Vivia managed, her voice weak. "Data core secured," Dr. Hansen confirmed, holding it up. "The empathic dampener prototype plans are here. We can wipe them." "And the Concord knows who you are now, Vivia," Talon said grimly, expertly piloting them away from the station, dodging frantic Concord fire. "Species diplomat. They'll escalate their efforts to capture you." Vivia looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of pain, exhaustion, and a fierce, unyielding love. "Then we will have to escalate our efforts to evade them. And to fight them." She reached out, her fingers finding his. Together. Their escape from Station Epsilon was a narrow one, but they had struck a significant blow against the Concord. They had the data core, a victory that could buy the galaxy precious time, but the cost was high. Vivia was injured, her identity known. The Concord's pursuit would be relentless. Their path to the Krell Nebula and the Sanctuary of Haven was now more critical and more dangerous than ever. The rising action was propelling them towards an unknown confrontation. Their fates and the fate of Sparky, hanging precariously in the balance, their only certainty the strength of their bond, and the desperate hope for a future where free will was not a heresy. The journey to the Krell Nebula was a long and arduous one, a series of calculated hyperspace jumps interspersed with tense periods in normal space, hiding in asteroid fields or the penumbras of dead stars, always watching for Concord patrols. Vivia's arm healed slowly, thanks to the glacial shard's advanced medical facilities and her own resilient Glacian physiology. But the encounter with the prefect had left its mark. The Concord knew her true significance now, not just as a skilled operative, but as a species diplomat whose empathic abilities were a direct threat to their agenda of control. Talon, Vivia, and Dr. Thorne worked together to analyze and then permanently erase the data on the empathic dampener from the confiscated core. It was a small victory, but a vital one. Sparky, seemingly understanding the importance of their task, would often emit soft, encouraging pulses of light as they worked. During this extended period of forced proximity and shared purpose, the bond between Talon and Vivia deepened into an unbreakable alloy of love, trust, and mutual respect. The earlier hesitations and cultural barriers had largely dissolved, replaced by an intimate understanding that transcended words. They learned to anticipate each other's needs, to read the unspoken emotions in a glance or a touch. Vivia, in particular, continued her remarkable growth. The rigid Glacian who had once prioritized protocol above all else was now a passionate advocate for freedom. Her decisions driven by a fierce moral compass and her profound empathy, amplified by her love for Talon and Sparky. One evening, as the ship drifted silently through a dark nebula, Vivia found Talon gazing at a holographic projection of the consciousness transfer device schematics they'd salvaged from the Pathfinder's fragmented logs. His brow was furrowed in intense concentration. Still wrestling with that particular demon, Vivia asked softly, coming to stand beside him. Talon sighed, running a hand through his hair. "This technology, it's an abomination in the Concord's hands. But the underlying principles, the idea of consciousness as a transferable quantum state, it's terrifyingly brilliant. If it could be used for good to save someone whose body is failing, to bridge irreparable physical divides. Some knowledge is too dangerous, Talon," Vivia cautioned, her voice gentle but firm. "Its potential for misuse far outweighs any perceived benefit, especially when beings like the Concord exist." I know, Talon conceded. "But my mind, it can't help but explore the possibilities. It's what I do." He looked at her, his eyes troubled. What if they already have a working prototype? What if their pursuit of Sparky isn't just for a power source, but to use the consciousness transfer device on it, to control it from within? A chill ran down Vivia's spine. The thought was horrifying. To have Sparky's innocent, vibrant consciousness overwritten, replaced by a Concord operative, it was unthinkable. Sparky, sensing her distress, pulsed a worried crimson from its alcove. Vivia reached for Talon's hand, her own now fully healed, her touch firm and reassuring. Then we will find a way to protect it. We will find Haven. Dr. Thorne's colleague Talon might have answers. They finally reached the edge of the Krell Nebula, a stunning, chaotic expanse of glowing gases, dark dust clouds, and newborn stars. Navigating it was even more treacherous than the Iron Maze, but Dr. Thorne provided the coded coordinates for Haven. It was a small, cloaked station hidden deep within a turbulent stellar nursery. As they approached, a coded signal emanated from Haven. "Identify yourselves." Dr. Thorne responded with the countersign. A section of the nebula seemed to shimmer and part, revealing a hidden docking bay. Haven. Talon, Dr. Thorne's former colleague, was a wary, intense man with eyes that seemed to see right through you. He greeted Dr. Thorne with a warm, if wary, embrace, then turned his penetrating gaze on Talon and Vivia. Sparky, sensing no immediate threat, pulsed a curious green. "Eris, you bring interesting company." Talon observed, his voice raspy. "And a unique passenger." He gestured towards Sparky. They explained their situation: the Concord, Sparky, the threat of the consciousness transfer device, Vivia's identity as a species diplomat being exposed. Talon listened intently, his expression growing grimmer with each revelation. "The Cognitive Concord has been growing bolder, more ruthless," Talon said when they had finished. "Their pursuit of total psychic domination is no longer a fringe theory. This consciousness transfer technology, I too have heard whispers. It is said to be their holy grail. Can you help us?" Vivia asked, her voice earnest. "Can you protect Sparky? Is there a way to shield it, or to counter this technology?" Talon led them to his private lab, a chaotic but brilliant space filled with strange devices and glowing schematics, protecting an astral weaver from a direct psychic assault, especially one amplified by technology. It is difficult. Their minds are open, empathic, vulnerable, but not impossible. He gestured to a complex device in the center of the lab. "I have been working on AV's synaptic scrambler. Theoretical, of course, designed to disrupt targeted psychic intrusion by creating a feedback loop of chaotic neural noise. It might offer some protection." But then, Talon's expression darkened further. "There is more you need to know. The Concord, they are not just building a weapon. They are preparing for something called the Great Unison. A plan to link all sentient minds into a single, controlled consciousness, orchestrated by their leadership. They believe it will bring an end to war, to conflict, to all undesirable thoughts, an end to free will itself." Talon and Vivia exchanged horrified glances. This was beyond anything they had imagined. "And the energy being, Sparky and others like it," Talon continued, "are not just power sources. They are to be the primary conduits, the amplifiers for this Great Unison, their natural empathic abilities twisted to enslave the galaxy." He looked directly at Vivia. "And species diplomats like yourself, with your heightened empathic resonance, you are either prime candidates for conversion, to become willing shepherds of this unison, or primary threats to be neutralized." Suddenly, alarms blared throughout Haven. "Concord attack!" A voice yelled over the station's intercom. "Multiple cruisers emerging from hyperspace." "They've found us," Talon swore. "They must have tracked your hyperspace signature, or perhaps Thorne's initial signal, when she first contacted me years ago, was compromised. My cloaking field won't hold against a sustained assault." Panic erupted on Haven. People ran through the corridors, seeking shelter or escape routes. Talon turned to Talon and Vivia, his face grim. "There's no time. The synaptic scrambler isn't ready for field deployment, and Haven cannot withstand a direct assault from a Concord fleet. We have to run," Talon said, grabbing Vivia's hand. "Get Sparky." "Run where?" Vivia asked, her mind racing. "They know about Haven now. They will anticipate our escape vectors from this nebula." Talon suddenly looked at a blinking light on one of his consoles. "There is one place. A desperate gamble. A legend among fringe scientists and outcasts. The void between galaxies." Talon and Vivia stared at him. "The intergalactic void. A place of absolute nothingness, light years from the nearest star, the nearest galaxy. Rescue impossible, resources non-existent. A death sentence. It said there are anomalies there. Talon pressed, his voice urgent. Distortions in space-time where the usual laws of physics break down. Some believe it's a gateway to other realities. Others a graveyard of ancient, failed universes. The Concord would never follow us there. They are creatures of order, they fear true, untamed chaos. But how would we survive? Talon asked, the theorist in him grappling with the sheer impossibility. No stars for navigation, no energy sources. The astral weaver. Talon said, his eyes fixed on Sparky, which was now pulsing with an intense, almost painful white light. They are born of cosmic energies. Perhaps it can navigate such a place. Perhaps it is the only thing that can. Explosions rocked Haven. The station's shields were failing. We have no choice, Vivia said, her voice resolute. She looked at Talon, her eyes filled with a desperate love. If this is our only path to protect Sparky, to escape the Concord, then we take it. Talon nodded, his heart heavy but his determination matching hers. To the void then. Talon quickly uploaded what data he could on the void anomalies and any potential survival theories to the Glacial Shard's computers. Go now! I will try to buy you some time, cripple their flagship if I can. May the stars, or whatever lies beyond them, guide you. They raced back to the Glacial Shard, explosions echoing around them. Dr. Thorne insisted on staying with Talon. My fight is here, she said, pressing a data crystal into Vivia's hand. This contains all my research on empathic resonance and psychic defense. Use it, and live. As the sea Glacial Shard blasted out of Haven's collapsing docking bay, with Concord cruisers swarming the station, Talon set a course for the coordinates. Talon had provided a theoretical jump point that, if his calculations were correct, could fling them into the intergalactic void. It was a one-way trip into utter desolation. Vivia, Talon said, his voice tight as he initiated the hyperspace jump sequence. Once we make this jump, there's no coming back. Not easily, maybe not ever. Vivia placed her hand on his shoulder. Sparky, sensing the momentous, terrifying nature of their decision, pressed against her, its light a fearful flickering rainbow. We are together, Talon. We have Sparky. And we have a cause worth fighting for. Whatever lies ahead, we face it as one. The hyperspace engines whined, reaching a fever pitch. The stars outside the viewport elongated, blurred, and then, with a gut-wrenching lurch, vanished. They were consumed by a perfect, featureless blackness. The Glacial Shard had jumped into the void between galaxies. The climax of their journey was upon them. In a place where rescue was impossible, resources were non-existent, and their only hope lay in their combined skills, their love for each other, and the mysterious power of the small, crystalline creature they had sworn to protect. The silence of the intergalactic void was absolute, a profound, crushing emptiness that pressed in on the Glacial Shard from all sides. No stars, no nebulae, not even the faintest glimmer of distant galaxies graced the viewports. Only an unnerving, uniform blackness that seemed to swallow light itself. The ship's sensors were useless, registering nothing but faint, isotropic background radiation. They were utterly alone, adrift in a cosmic ocean of nothing. Talon fought against a rising tide of despair. As a warp-drive theorist, he understood the vastness of space. But this was something else entirely. This was oblivion made manifest. Talon's coordinates, they were accurate, he murmured, his voice barely a whisper. We're here. Vivia sat beside him, her face pale but composed. Her empathic senses, usually so attuned to the vibrant life of the galaxy, were now met with a deafening, terrifying silence. It was like being blind and deaf in a universe devoid of sensory input. I feel nothing, she said, a tremor in her voice. No life, no energy currents, no echoes. Just void. Sparky in its alcove was inner, its light extinguished, a mere crystal in the oppressive darkness. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced Talon's heart. Had the jump, the sheer emptiness, killed it? Vivia seemed to sense his fear. She unstrapped herself and moved to Sparky's alcove, her hand gently touching the crystalline form. Sparky, she whispered. Can you hear me? For a long moment there was nothing. Then, a faint, almost imperceptible flicker of blue from deep within the crystal. It was weak, so weak, but it was there. Sparky was alive but dormant, its energy reserves depleted by the terrifying transition and the utter lack of ambient cosmic energy to draw upon. It's alive. Vivia breathed, relief flooding her voice. But it's fading. This void is draining it. We need to find one of those anomalies Talon mentioned. Talon said, forcing himself into action. A pocket of energy, a distortion, anything. But how, with no sensors, no way to navigate? Suddenly, the ship lurched violently. Alarms shrieked. What now? Talon yelled, fighting the controls. Unknown energy surge, Vivia cried, pointing to a section of the viewport that was no longer black, but rippling with strange, chaotic colors, like oil on water, but on a cosmic scale. It's one of the anomalies. But as the anomaly pulsed and shifted, something else emerged from its depths. Not a ship, but a presence. A vast, shadowy form that seemed to coalesce out of the void itself. And with it, a chilling, familiar mental signature that flooded the bridge, cold and utterly ruthless. The Concord. Vivia gasped, her hand flying to her head as if to ward off a psychic blow. But how? How could they follow us here? They didn't follow us. Talon realized with dawning horror, his eyes fixed on the shadowy behemoth that was now solidifying, resolving into the terrifying, angular lines of a Concord super dreadnought, far larger than any cruiser they had encountered. They were waiting for us. Kalen, his information must have been compromised. Or this void between galaxies isn't as unknown to them as he thought. The Concord prefect's voice, amplified, chillingly calm, echoed in their minds, bypassing the ship's comms entirely. Talon Grave. Vivia Pegasus. Your futile resistance ends here. The Great Unison awaits, and the Astral Weaver will be its herald. This was it. The ultimate confrontation in a place where no help would ever come. Their backs were against the wall of infinity. Shields up. Talon roared, though he knew their damaged shields wouldn't last long against a dreadnought. Vivia, can you? Their psychic presence is overwhelming. Vivia gritted out, her face contorted in pain. They're trying to subdue Sparky directly? And me! The Concord dreadnought opened fire, not with conventional weapons, but with lances of pure, disruptive psychic energy that battered against the glacial shard's shields, making the ship scream in protest. Colors flashed across the viewports, not from weapons fire, but from the sheer mental force being projected at them. Sparky, Vivia cried. The little crystal in its alcove was now pulsing erratically, flickers of terrified crimson and despairing black. The Concord was focusing its assault on the weakest, most valuable asset. Talon knew they couldn't win a direct fight. They needed a miracle. His mind, honed by years of theoretical physics and desperate improvisation, raced. The anomaly, the chaotic energy. Vivia, the consciousness transfer device? He exclaimed, a wild idea forming. This, Pathfinder, schematics Kalen's data. If we can create a focused feedback loop, channel Sparky's innate energy through it, and target their dreadnought's psychic emitters, maybe we can overload them, turn their own weapon against them. But the device isn't built, Vivia protested. And Sparky is too weak. We don't need the whole device? Talon urged, his fingers flying across his console, pulling up the schematics, cross-referencing them with the glacial shard systems. Just the core principles. Your ship's energy conduits, your empathic abilities to channel and focus Sparky's raw potential. We can jury-rig a psychic resonator. It was insane. Utterly, completely insane. But it was their only shot. Vivia looked at Talon, then at Sparky, then back at Talon. Her eyes, even amidst the psychic assault, shone with a fierce, desperate love and trust. Tell me what to do. For the next few agonizing minutes, under the relentless psychic bombardment of the Concord dreadnought, they worked as one. Talon, his mind a whirlwind of calculations, rerouted power, modified shield harmonics, and guided Vivia through the complex process of aligning the ship's systems into a makeshift psychic weapon. Vivia, fighting through the crushing mental pressure, used her empathic resonance to connect with Sparky, to coax its fading energy, to shield it as best she could while simultaneously attuning herself to the ship's modified conduits. She became the living heart of their desperate gambit. Her body a conduit for energies both physical and psychic. Her density shifted, her skin taking on a crystalline sheen, not of hardness but of pure, focused energy. Light seemed to flow from her fingertips as she interfaced with the ship's controls, her commands no longer verbal, but direct empathic impulses. Almost there, Vivia! Talon urged, his own head pounding from the psychic backlash. You need to channel Sparky's core essence, its life force, through the primary emitter array. But it has to be a controlled burst, a resonant frequency that will overload their psychic dampeners, not just a raw blast. I understand. Vivia gasped, her form now glowing with an ethereal light that mirrored Sparky's desperate pulses. She was pushing herself beyond all known Glacian limits, her love for Talon and her determination to protect Sparky fueling an incredible surge of power. The Concord dreadnought loomed closer, its psychic assault intensifying, the glacial shard shields flickering and dying. The prefect's voice echoed in their minds, triumphant. Your struggles are futile. Embrace the unison. Embrace peace? Not your peace? Talon snarled, overriding the external comms. He made one final adjustment. No, Vivia! No! Vivia screamed, a sound that was both agony and defiance. An incredible surge of multicolored light erupted from Sparky, flowing into Vivia through her, and then, amplified and focused by the glacial shard's modified systems, it lanced out in a tight, coherent beam of pure, concentrated psycho-emotive energy. It was not a beam of destruction, but of overwhelming chaotic, a liberating emotion, joy, sorrow, love, anger, hope, despair, all the raw, untamed essence of free consciousness, fired like a psychic bullet. The beam struck the Concord dreadnought's primary psychic emitter array. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the array began to glow an angry red. Feedback overloaded its systems. The carefully controlled, monolithic psychic presence of the Concord fractured, dissolving into a cacophony of discordant mental shrieks. The dreadnought itself shuddered violently, lights flickering across its vast hull. The prefect's voice, no longer calm, but filled with agony and disbelief, screamed in their minds. No, impossible? The chaos it burns. The psychic assault on the glacial shard ceased. The dreadnought began to drift, its systems failing, its internal cohesion shattered by the very force it sought to control, amplified and turned back on itself by the combined power of a human theorist, a Glacian empath, and an orphaned star child. But the victory came at a terrible cost. Vivia collapsed, her light extinguished, her form limp in the command chair. Sparky, its last reserves of energy depleted, went utterly dark and silent. Vivia! Talon cried, rushing to her side. He fumbled for her pulse. It was faint, thready. Vivia, stay with me. The Concord dreadnought, crippled and silent, was now being pulled inexorably towards the chaotic, swirling energy anomaly from which it had emerged. It vanished into the roiling colors, consumed by the very void it had sought to weaponize. But Talon had no time for triumph. Vivia was dying. Sparky was lifeless. They were alone, in the absolute nothingness, their makeshift weapon having drained their last hopes. He held Vivia close, tears streaming down his face, his heart breaking. I love you, Vivia, he whispered, his voice choked with despair. Please don't leave me. As Vivia lay cradled in Talon's arms, her life force ebbing away, a faint, desperate idea sparked in his grief-stricken mind. The consciousness transfer schematics, the Pathfinder's dangerous, forbidden research. He had dismissed it, feared it, but now, the device. He whispered, his gaze flicking to the console where the fragmented data was stored. If her consciousness, just until we can find help. It was a desperate, mad gamble, a perversion of the technology he abhorred, but to save Vivia, he gently laid her down, his hands shaking as he activated the console. The schematics were incomplete, the process unstable, but Kalen's parting gift, Dr. Thorne's research on empathic resonance and psychic defense, it contained theories on stabilizing neural patterns, on creating psychic anchors. And Sparky, even inert, its crystalline structure might act as a temporary vessel, a psychic crucible, if he could somehow bridge the gap. He looked at Sparky, cold and dark. I'm sorry, he whispered to the inert crystal. I don't know if this will work, or if it will destroy you both. But I have to try. Working with frantic, desperate precision, fueled by adrenaline and a sliver of insane hope, Talon began to adapt the glacial shard systems once more. He wasn't trying to build the full device, just a focused conduit, a way to capture Vivia's fading consciousness, her unique neural signature, and somehow temporarily imprint it onto Sparky's crystalline matrix before it was lost forever. It was a shot in the darkest of voids, a prayer to an uncaring universe. He was using the enemy's potential weapon, twisting its purpose in a desperate bid for life. The glacial shard drifted silently in the absolute blackness, a tiny spark of fading hope in an infinite abyss. The Concord dreadnought was gone, consumed by the anomaly. But on the bridge, a far more personal and desperate battle was being waged for Vivia's life, with Talon staking everything on a forbidden technology and the faint, residual empathic connection between a dying Glacian and an inert star child. The climax had passed, but the immediate aftermath was a race against oblivion itself. Talon worked with feverish intensity, his grief held at bay by a fragile, desperate hope. He jury-rigged a direct neural interface from Vivia's environmental suit helmet to a modified section of Sparky's alcove. incorporating elements from Talon's synaptic scrambler theory to act as a buffer and a potential stabilizer. Dr. Thorne's research on empathic harmonics provided the theoretical framework for a gentle, resonant transfer, rather than a forceful overwrite. He was flying blind, guided only by theory, desperation, and his profound love for Vivia. Her breathing was shallow, her pulse fading to almost nothing. "Hold on, Vivia," he murmured, his voice hoarse. "Just a little longer, please." He initiated the sequence. A low hum filled the bridge as energy flowed through the makeshift apparatus. Vivia's inert form twitched. Sparky's crystalline structure, still dark, began to emit a faint, almost imperceptible vibration. Talon monitored the readouts, his heart pounding. Neural activity in Vivia was dropping catastrophically. But then, a flicker on another screen, a faint, corresponding empathic echo within Sparky's matrix. It was weak, fragmented, but it was there. "It's working, I think it's working," he breathed, daring to hope. The process took what felt like an eternity. The hum intensified, then slowly faded. Vivia's body went still, utterly still. Her pulse was gone. A sob escaped Talon's lips. He had failed. But then, from Sparky's alcove, a soft, hesitant pulse of light. Not the vibrant colors of before, but a gentle, pure white. And with it, a faint, familiar empathic presence that made Talon's breath catch in his throat. He stumbled towards the alcove, his legs weak. He reached out a trembling hand to the crystal. As his fingers brushed its surface, he felt it not Sparky's youthful curiosity, but Vivia's calm, focused consciousness, faint and disoriented, but undeniably her. "Vivia," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. The white light pulsed again, stronger this time. And then, a single, clear thought resonated in his mind, not in words, but in pure, unadulterated Vivia Nessa Talon, "I am here." Tears streamed down Talon's face. Tears of grief transformed into tears of unbelievable, miraculous relief. He had done it. He had saved her consciousness, impossibly, by housing it within the crystalline body of Sparky. Vivia lived in a new, alien form. The immediate crisis of her death was averted, but their situation was still dire. They were in the void, Vivia's consciousness in an alien crystal, Sparky's own essence now dormant or merged in some unknown way. The Glacial shard had minimal power, and no way to navigate out of this endless night, but Vivia was with him. Her presence, even in this strange new form, was a beacon. He could feel her calm, her strength, her love, resonating from the crystal. "And we need to find a way out." Talon, her thoughts came, clearer now, more focused. A Sparky's energy, it is still within this form. And my own. Combined, perhaps we can sense the anomaly that consumed the Concord ship. It was a nexus of unstable energy. It might be a door. Talon's mind, spurred by her presence, began to work again. "You mean, use your combined empathic senses, amplified by Sparky's crystalline structure, to navigate the void?" "Precisely," Vivia confirmed. "The void is not entirely empty. It has currents, echoes of creation. We can find them, together." And so, their new journey began. Talon at the helm, Vivia Sparky as his navigator, her consciousness now a living compass in the utter desolation. Her empathic reach, amplified by the crystal's natural abilities, was far greater than before. She could sense the faint, residual energy trails, the subtle warps in space-time that marked the passage of the anomaly. Days turned into weeks. They rationed their remaining supplies, their only company the silent, infinite blackness, and the steady, reassuring pulse of Vivia's consciousness within the crystal. Talon talked to her constantly, telling her stories, sharing his hopes, his fears. And she responded, her thoughts a comforting presence in his mind, her love a tangible warmth that fought back the cold despair of the void. They found the anomaly. It was a vast, swirling vortex of chaotic energies, a wound in the fabric of reality. It was terrifying, but it was also their only hope. "This is it, Talon," Vivia's thought came firm and resolute. "This is our way out. Or our end. Are you ready?" Talon looked at the crystal, at the soft white light that was Vivia. He reached out, placing his hand against its smooth, warm surface. "With you. Always." He piloted the glacial shard towards the heart of the storm. The ship bucked and strained, alarms blaring. Chaotic energies battered them, but Vivia's consciousness, intertwined with Sparky's latent power, created a shield of focused intent, guiding them through the maelstrom, finding the calm at the center of the cosmic hurricane. And then, with a final, blinding flash, they were through. Stars, millions of them. A glorious, breathtaking, unfamiliar starscape stretched before them. They were out of the void. They had survived. A weak, Joyful pulse of multicolored light emanated from the crystal, and Talon a flicker of Sparky's original essence, reawakening, blending with Vivia's steady white glow. We did it. Talon Vivia's thoughts sang in his mind, filled with triumph and an overwhelming love. We did it. Their relationship, already tested by rivalry, danger, and the threat of annihilation, had now transcended the physical. Vivia's consciousness, housed in Sparky's crystalline form, and Talon, the human who had dared to use forbidden science to save her, were bound together in a way no two beings had ever been. Their personal choice, born of desperation and love, had not only saved them, but had also preserved the unique consciousness of an astral weaver and a Glacian species diplomat. The implications for the future, for understanding consciousness, for interspecies relations were profound. They had fought for love and new life, and against all odds they had won. Now, they had to find their place in a galaxy that was still largely unaware of the true nature of the Cognitive Concord, or the miracle that had occurred in the desolate void between galaxies. Their journey was far from over. In many ways, it was just beginning. Their re-entry into galactic space was far from any known shipping lanes or civilized systems. The glacial shard, battered but miraculously intact, drifted towards a vibrant, uncharted nebula, its systems slowly recharging from the ambient stellar radiation. Talon, exhausted but exhilarated, sat before the crystalline form that now housed Vivia's consciousness, and he was beginning to understand, a re-emerging Sparky, their essences intertwined in a unique symbiosis. For the experience it has changed me, Talon Vivia's thoughts flowed into his mind, tinged with wonder. I feel Sparky's joy, its connection to the light of these new stars. And Sparky, it feels my memories, my love for you. We are more than we were. You are both incredible. Talon said, his voice thick with emotion. He gently touched the crystal. It pulsed with a warm, complex light, a blend of Vivia's serene white and Sparky's playful rainbow hues. Their first priority was to find a safe haven, a place to recover and plan their next move. The data crystal from Dr. Thorne, containing her research and Kalen's notes, was their most valuable asset. It held not just information on psychic defense, but also theoretical pathways for interspecies communication and understanding consciousness, knowledge the galaxy desperately needed, especially with the Concord still at large. They eventually made contact with a small, independent research collective operating on the fringes of Federation space, a group Kalen had mentioned as potential allies. Wary at first, the collective was astounded by their story, by the evidence of the Concord's advanced psychic weaponry, and, most of all, by the unique being that was now Vivia Sparky. With the collective's help, they began to disseminate their findings carefully, exposing the Concord's Great Unison plan and their use of consciousness manipulation. The news sent shockwaves through certain sectors of the galaxy, particularly among species with strong empathic or psychic abilities, who now understood the true nature of the threat they faced. The process of Vivia adapting to her new existence was remarkable. With Sparky's innate connection to cosmic energies, her empathic reach became galactic in scope. She could sense the emotional currents of entire worlds, the silent songs of distant stars. Her diplomatic abilities, once confined by Glacian protocol and physical limitations, were now boundless. She became a bridge, not just between species, but between different states of being. Talon, meanwhile, threw himself into studying the data they had gathered, particularly the theories on consciousness and advanced warp dynamics. His experiences in the void, navigating by empathic currents, had given him new insights, new avenues of research that could revolutionize interstellar travel and understanding. Their love, which had blossomed in adversity, now matured into a partnership of profound depth and unique intimacy. Talon learned to communicate with Vivia not just through her projected thoughts, but through shared empathic states, through the subtle shifts in the light and energy of her crystalline form. Their connection was a testament to love's ability to transcend physical boundaries. A few years passed. The Cognitive Concord, though still a powerful force, found its influence waning as more and more of its insidious plans came to light, thanks in large part to the information network Talon and Vivia had helped establish. The galaxy was slowly awakening to the threat to free will. One day, Talon stood with Vivia Sparky, now often just referred to as Vivia, as their integration was so complete on the observation deck of a newly constructed orbital facility. It was a sleek, star-shaped structure, bathed in the light of a binary sun. Below them, Ships from dozens of different species moved in orderly patterns. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Talon said, his arm around the softly glowing crystal that rested on a specially designed pedestal. "It is, my love." Vivia's thoughts resonated, filled with warmth and contentment. "The Great Pegasus Institute for Unified Cosmic Studies. It has a nice ring to it." Their actions, their survival, their unique bond, had inspired the formation of this joint human-alien research institute, dedicated to exploring the mysteries of consciousness, empathic communication, advanced warp theory, and fostering peaceful interspecies understanding. It was their legacy, born from their fight for love and new life. Scientists, theorists, empaths, and diplomats from across the galaxy came here to learn, to share, to push the boundaries of knowledge in a spirit of cooperation that stood in stark defiance of the Concord's ideology of control. Talon was now the Institute's head of theoretical physics, his work on warp dynamics already leading to breakthroughs. Vivia in her crystalline form was its heart, her unparalleled empathic abilities and unique perspective guiding its diplomatic and ethical considerations, helping to bridge communication gaps that had once seemed insurmountable. She was the ultimate species diplomat, her very existence a symbol of unexpected union and transformative love. "We did it, Vivia?" Talon murmured, leaning his head against her crystalline form. "We fought for love, for new life, and we helped to build something lasting." "We did," Talon, her thoughts echoed his, a symphony of shared emotion and intellect. "And our journey is still unfolding. There are so many stars to explore, so many minds to connect with, so much love yet to share." The crystal pulsed with a radiant, joyful light, a harmonious blend of serene white and vibrant rainbow hues, illuminating Talon's face. He smiled, his heart full. Across the stars, against impossible odds, they had found their unexpected union, fought for their love, and in doing so, had helped to bring a new era of understanding and hope to a galaxy that desperately needed it. Their adventure was a testament to the enduring power of connection, courage, and the belief that even in the deepest void, love could find a way to shine. The future stretched before them, as limitless and full of promise as the star-dusted expanse beyond the Institute's viewports, a future they would face, as always, together.